in. Here goes. So what's your superpower is the check-in question. We've got some folks who've been typing some answers in the chat box, which you'll find just on the right side of your screen. Keep typing because I'm curious, and I think it's going to help you when it comes to coming up with your topics for your personal insight questions. Some more facts about me. I studied at Northwestern, performance studies. Got a couple counseling certificates. I got one from Interchange Counseling Institute and Therapeutic Counseling, and I got a college counseling certificate. I've been doing this for really about 13 years. This college essay stuff. I was working as a teacher. I consider myself really a writing teacher. I like getting certifications. So one of my certifications is in Myers-Briggs. If you're curious, I'm an ENFJ who tests as an ENFP, if that means anything to you. And I've been certified in hypnotherapy. And sometimes students worry or wonder, like, are you going to hypnotize me? And I won't be hypnotizing you on this call, but sometimes in my courses and my workshops, I use what I would call hypnotic language. And by the way, that's not a freaky or scary thing. We get hypnotized. You've been hypnotized probably several times today. I'm also the college essay guy because when I looked up the URL in 2011, nobody else was. But I probably have done about 200 workshops like this. I do online workshops mostly. I do them in person. I just was working at Granada Hills Charter School up here near where I live in Los Angeles. And I have a bunch of Twitter followers if you're interested in Tumblr as well. I'm on Instagram if you're interested in getting college resources. And on my webpage, I've got a little email opt-in where I basically send it free resources out. Oh, and I've got a new podcast that where I share, free resources for college. And I've got an amazing daughter named Zola. And this is just like gratuitous baby picture because I think she's amazing. So in March 2016, the UC prompts changed, and some people freaked out because they'd been doing this a certain way, and the essays had been the same for a long time, and people wondered why, what happened? So a few reasons. This is coming from some of the UC directors. A lot of students were being abstract and indirect, and the UCs, in short, they just weren't getting the information that they wanted. In some cases, students were sounding too academic, and really, the UCs, this is the main reason, is that there are 14 specific things that they're looking for. So when you're applying to the UCs, and these are not a mystery, you can Google this, but I'll share them with you in a second. There are 14 elements of what's called comprehensive review. So when the UCs read your application, and this is like, 105,000 or whatever that applied to UCLA, all of them get read, all of the applications get read, and they get read according to these 14 criteria. That's what they're judging your application based on, or I should say scoring your application based on. And here they are, and we'll get more into the specifics of what these are in just a minute. But essentially, the old prompt, the old UC prompt, and you don't need to read it too closely because I don't want you to think it's the more recent one, but people were writing about things like leadership and creativity and their talents and skills. And for the other prompt, this was the old other prompt, it was asking about a personal quality or talent or accomplishment. And again, people were writing about leadership and creativity, and, maybe they were writing about community service. And so they thought, well, if these are the things we want to know about, let's just ask more directly about these. And I happen to be a huge fan of these. I was a huge fan of the old prompts, and I'm a huge fan of the new prompts because I think that these 8 new prompts that they've been using now for a year really help students show a lot of different sides of themselves. So what you need to know, the first thing you need to know is that you'll be given these 8 prompts. And if you Google, I didn't put these up here because I didn't want you didn't need to read them. You can just look at the simplified version. If you Google UC prompt or UC personal insight questions, you'll see these 8 prompts. Now, your job, this is the first thing you need to know, is to choose 4 of these. And in 350 words for each one, say something meaningful about yourself. And I'll get into what I mean by something meaningful. And my hope by the end of this session is that you'll maybe have some idea of what you want to write about. But these prompts aren't new, just like New Mexico. And they're not exactly Mexico. So that's something else that they have in common with New Mexico. Now, these prompts are basically, prompts that students have been writing about for years and years. So don't freak out. Today on this webinar, I'm going to be addressing, well, I've kind of already addressed why they changed. What are the elements of the 14 elements of comprehensive review? I'll get more into detail on those. How can I pick my 4 UC topics? Hopefully you'll get a chance to. How do I know if my topic is a good one? I'll give you some things to think about. Most importantly, maybe, will be when I talk about how you can stand out on the UC prompts. And I'm going to give you a really good exercise for how to make your topic different from somebody else writing on the same topic, especially if you're worried because you might have a topic that's kind of common, or you're worried it'll sound cliche. Here's how to not sound cliche. I'll share that about 2/3 of the way in. I'll show you a great sample personal insight question. And if you'll notice, I'm not calling them essays. The UC directors have asked, counselors, and also me personally, to not refer to them as essays, because essays, oftentimes students have an association with an essay as being something that's academic, and they're looking for just answers to these questions. I'll share a little bit about a course that I've created, and then we'll talk about anything you want on the Q&A. All right. So here we go. 14 elements of comprehensive review. Here's what they're looking for when they're evaluating your application. Number 1, how's your GPA? Number 2, how are your test scores? SAT, ACT, APs. How are the courses, both those that you've planned and the ones you've completed? In other words, in terms of those you've completed, obviously you're going to be applying, halfway through senior year. There will be some that you're done with, and some that you're not yet finished with. But they want to know, are you really challenging yourself in your senior year? Or are you just kind of phoning it in for the second half of 12th grade? Did you take any honors courses? Could be, AP courses, IB, depending on your school. ELC stands for eligibility in local context. If you're in the top 9% of your school, you get into one of the UCs. It may not be the one that you want, but you will get into one of them. That's one of the cool things they offer. How difficult are your 12th grade classes? And, did you challenge yourself? Academic opportunities means how many, what was offered at your school. So one of the things they look at, for example, is how many APs were offered and what percentage of those AP classes did you take? If you just took one, well, it's okay. But if it's only one that was offered and you took one class, then that's 100% of the APs. That looks pretty good. But if there were, let's say, 12 or 15 courses offered and you only took one, well, that means you took, 8% of the courses available to you. So what they're really looking for is, did you make the most of the opportunities afforded to you? In every school, and especially the schools in California, there's a lot of information that they'll have about your school. And so they'll know what the opportunities were that were available to you. Did you take advantage of those? Obviously, the grades in your A through G courses, English, math, science, etc. Special projects is a pretty open category. It's like, did you do an internship? Did you, let's say, gosh, there's so many. Did you create your own, e-zine? Do you blog? It's really pretty wide open. Improvement in academic performance. Did you have terrible grades in 9th grade? In 10th grade, did they get better? In 11th grade, was that your straight A's, best year yet? Showing that you've improved and that you've worked hard. They really care about that. Special awards, talents, and achievements kind of speaks for itself, but did you win a debate competition? Did you win a tennis contest, a tennis competition? Do you play sports? Anything that you've achieved that that you would put on your activities list. An educational prep program are summer programs that are offered by different schools or different programs that are basically helping students apply to college. I wouldn't consider SAT classes to be an educational prep program, so I would leave those off. If you took SAT prep, you wouldn't necessarily need to list those. Academic accomplishment within life experiences. In other words, let's say you've had a really tough go of things. Let's say freshman year, your dad lost his job, and he's having trouble finding work, so you got a job to help support the family. Maybe you got a couple bad grades in there, but you were able to pick things up and still keep the job, let's say, in the next year. That would be academic accomplishment within life experiences. So they want to know, what have you been through? What challenges have you faced? Because that provides a lot of context for the application. And finally, geographic location. There's not anything you can do about this, but where your school is and what the context is for that, matters in the larger context. That's kind of complicated, so I don't want to get into that because there's nothing really you can do about that, but that's something else that they look at. Because and the reason I say that is that I don't want somebody to hear something be like, oh, I need to switch schools based on the change in the geographic location of my school. So how do I find my 4 UC topics? Let me give you some resources. Here's how to find your 4 UC topics in about 5 minutes. This is kind of the short version of a longer thing that I do on a course that I'll tell you about at the end. So one way is to just basically create your UC activities list. And if you Google how to write your UC activities list, this is a great way to find some of your 4 topics. For example, and look at this, activities list here. You could see that the student is founder and president of Model UN. She was an Indian classical and Bollywood dancer, strings orchestra, a lot of variety, a lot of cool stuff. This is the fastest way, I think, to find your activities, or sorry, find your topics. The UCs will ask you for, they'll give you a lot of space. I think it's either 20 or 25 blanks where you can include all your activities that you've been involved in, any work experience, any community service, any awards you've won. So, you've got lots of room to do that. You've got more room, in fact, on the UC application than you'll have on the Common App application. So one of the things I advise my students that I work with to do is create your UC activities list first, and then you choose your top 10 for your Common App. And then whichever activities are left over, you can put those in the additional info section. Now, a lot of students don't know what the additional info section is or how to use it. That's one great way to use it. And if you're trying to figure out, well, what is he talking about? Just Google Common App additional info, and you'll see another post that I wrote on things that you can include in that section. As you can tell, I've spent a lot of time creating resources around this stuff, a lot of time thinking about it. Another way to find your a topic is to just think about leadership in a broader context. So one of the obvious ways to think about leadership is, holding an impressive title. So for example, in that last activities list, you saw founder and president, but, or you started something, like maybe you were a nonprofit founder, but it could be that you were actually like the key decision maker on a project. Like maybe you weren't the editor in chief of your school newspaper, but maybe you were the layouts editor, or maybe you helped. I had a student a few years back who helped draft the school's student constitution. And, it's like she didn't have an official title, but that's leadership, definitely. Or maybe, you had to take on extra work responsibilities at home. So you were a leader at home or in your community, in your church or your place of worship. So think about leadership in the broader sense. Don't think that you have to be president or vice president of something in order to have something that counts as leadership. So this little handout that you're seeing here is part of the packet that I'll share with you at the end. I'll tell you how to get this packet. Maybe you were in charge of the volunteers, for example, on a community service event. These things count, I think. The third way is to think about ways that you've been challenged. And some students don't think of these experiences as being particular challenges. But maybe you come from a single parent household, and to you that's totally normal and that's just like the way life is. But there could be certain difficulties or challenges that have come with that. Maybe that's meant more responsibility around the home. Maybe you cook for the family, or you do added chores because you have one parent at home. And I don't need to read all these, but you can kind of read these for yourself. Maybe there were certain courses that you couldn't take because your school didn't offer them. Or maybe you just couldn't get a ride. There were certain travel challenges. I worked with a student a couple of years ago who she just couldn't be out after dark because her neighborhood was too dangerous. So she couldn't participate she had limited participation in extracurricular activities. But by explaining that on her application, and you don't have to necessarily explain this in one of your personal insight questions, this could be in your additional info, but it could be a part of one of the one of the prompts asks about particular challenges that you've been through. So actually, let me zoom back for a second because you might not have those. I have these prompts in my head, but I want to go back to these. Here are these topics again. Okay. So you're asked to talk about either leadership, creativity. How do you express and show your creativity? What's a talent or skill that you have? Is there an educational barrier that you've faced? Or a significant educational opportunity, like maybe you had an opportunity to do an internship or a summer program. Is there a significant challenge you've overcome or a set of challenges? They want to know about that. This is that sort of, academic achievement in your life context. Favorite academic subject? This one is especially important if you're applying to, let's say, UC Berkeley for engineering. Talking about, how you've excelled and really gone above and beyond in a math class can be important. Examples of improving your community kind of stands for, makes sense on its own, but, just to give you a sense of that your community could be however you define it, your school community, your, faith community. It could be your local community. It could be even maybe your home community or your extended family. And then the last prompt is just ask what sets you apart from other applicants. Okay. So just wanted to get them in your head because I realized they're in my head, but they may not be in your head. Okay. So let me just give you a couple more examples of ways to find your topic. So as I mentioned, challenges and thinking about ways that you've experienced challenges might lead to a potential topic. And, maybe, for example, one of your parents was on disability or unemployment, and that impacted your life. Okay. So that could be a potential one. So take a look. These are not, obviously, this is not like a prescriptive list. Like these are the only challenges. These are just some things to get you thinking about challenge in a broader context. Same with leadership. The examples I gave aren't obviously the only ways. It's just to begin thinking about the heart of these topics in a broader way, in a broad way. Here's another exercise that I like called 4 Ways I'm a Genius. And it involves looking at this, theory of multiple intelligences that Howard Gardner popularized and ranking yourself based on how you're a genius. So, for example, there's visual spatial intelligence. And, if you were on the very beginning of the call, Anthony mentioned that his superpower is organizing things. He can go into a room and in an hour have it in ship shape. So that's a good one. If you play a lot of Tetris, you might be improving your visual spatial, or if you enjoy it, that might be an indication that you're good at it. That might be an indication that you've got high visual spatial intelligence. There's also bodily kinesthetic. So say you are taught a dance and you're able to pick it up in just like a minute. That is not necessarily me. Or, sports, if you're coordinated, you can, never play ping pong before, you pick it up and you're pretty good at it. Musical intelligence, somebody mentioned on the call, they've got perfect pitch. Interpersonal means, how well do you know people? How well do you communicate? Do you write a great email that's succinct? That's interpersonal intelligence. And then intrapersonal is how much time do you spend thinking about and how well do you know yourself? Linguistic intelligence is how well do you use words? Do you write in your journal? Do you love to write poetry? Do you play word games? I love word games. That's one of my favorite things to do. Do you love spoonerisms? Spoonerisms is when you switch the first letters. Like instead of saying, I'm going to take a shower, you say, I'm going to shake a tower. If you think that's funny, then you might like word games as well. Logical mathematical is, exploring patterns, relationships, solving puzzles, Sudoku. So one thing I like to do is just have students, and it's fun for parents and counselors to do this, is just to rank yourself 1 to 4. And then, give an example of each one of these, because it could be that could lead to something that sets you apart from other students. That could go for that prompt number 8. And again, this handout, I'll share it with you at the end. 4 values that have fueled me. This is a really good exercise. I use this in other contexts as well. You can find this if you just go to guide-values-exercise. But look at your top values. You can sort of look through this list, or you can just Google values exercise and pick your top 10 values or top 5 values and ask yourself, how do I express my values in the world? So let's say, for example, one of your values is health and fitness. That's something you're really committed to. Well, how do you express that? What activities have you done that have allowed you to, that have strengthened your commitment to your own health and fitness, and maybe the health and fitness of others? Some other ways to find your topics. If you can Google all these and find these exercises, the essence objects exercise, the everything I want colleges to know about me exercise, which basically just involves writing everything you want colleges to know about you on a blank sheet of paper. You could do this with friends or family at a coffee shop in about an hour. It's kind of fun. You can draw pictures, just basically do a brainstorm. And then this 21 details exercise involves coming up with just random details about yourself. So some of my 21 details include, I lived in 10 countries before I was 4. And I went to 13 schools. What else can I tell you about me? I won the spelling bee in 4th grade. I was really proud. I got 2nd place. But really what was more meaningful to me about that experience was like preparing for that with my grandfather, who passed away a couple of years later. 21 details. Let's see. I've never had a fight with my brothers, like a serious fight. We've seemed to get along pretty well. I've got 3 younger brothers. And so basically by making this list, you can kind of just create more stuff. You just get creative and start thinking about all the different parts of who you are. It can also help generate some stuff for the additional info section. I'm not saying everything that I'm telling you should go in your additional info section, but it can generate lots of ideas. And if you're, say, working with somebody else, like a friend or a counselor or, anybody who's helping mentor you through this process, this will help give them more information about you and make sure that all the parts of you end up in your application. Okay, so how do you know if it's a great topic? And by the way, I don't expect you to necessarily have all 4 topics mapped out, but maybe you have an idea of 1 or 2 things that you'd like to write about. That's good. That's what we need for the next part of the webinar. But how do we know if it's a great topic? Well, there are a couple qualities that I say to look for. One is elasticity. And by elasticity, I mean, is your topic stretchy enough to talk about several different parts of you? And by parts, what I'm referring to really is your values. So let's say, for example, I was working with a student last year and she was talking about, working at an ice cream store. And I said, okay, well, what have you learned there? And she's like, not so much. I was like, what do you mean? I was like, what do you do? And she's like, give the people ice cream. I'm like, okay. What values does it connect to? And she couldn't really tell me any. I was like, how long have you been there? And she's like, about a week. I was like, okay, might not be the best topic because you probably haven't had enough experiences there yet to write about. So we hit on something else where she wrote, she was a blogger and she'd done lots of traveling. And I asked, well, what values does that connect with? And she was like, oh my gosh, creativity. And she looked at this list and she was like, ambition, travel, accountability, because I have to keep to my deadlines. So she was able to list all these values. And I was like, cool, that's a good litmus test. If you can name 4 or 5 values just right off the bat that your activity helps you connect with, that's important. Why? Because really, think of these topics as being focusing lenses, as it were, for really just getting into like other parts of you. The topics don't matter so much. In fact, I like to say sometimes that your topic is not really your topic. You're the topic. You are always your main topic. The topic is really just the means by which, the excuse to talk about your values. And think about this. If you, in each of your personal insight questions, were able to talk about 4 or 5 different values in each of your personal insight questions, and I'll give you an example of that in a second, well, by the end of your application, they've got a wide variety, a sense of who you are and what's important to you. So first of all, elasticity is important. Next, variety. Notice that these puzzle pieces, which represent your 4 personal insight questions, are all different colors. So if your first topic is on debate, don't make your next topic debate, make it something else, right? Make sure that, like I like to say to students, that it's not like your first topic is like, medium color blue, like let's say bright blue, and then your next one is like dark blue. See if you can really differentiate. Now, if you've got 2 topics that overlap but are clearly different, so let's say, for example, one of them is debate, but the second topic you want to write about is like a debate program that you started for low-income youth in your community, then make that, obviously, they're going to be different prompts. Make sure you're really emphasizing not debate for that second topic, right? If this is all about how you research and you love the thrill of arguing and all these things, the sort of quote unquote debatey things, then make this one more about sharing, giving, solving a problem. If you're writing a community service essay, that could be a great thing to focus on. Okay. So make sure each of your topics is clearly different. And how do you know? Say your 4 topics to somebody and ask, do you think those all sound different? And if they say yes, then maybe they do. Okay. Really basic advice here, folks. So the third thing is, I think make sure that you don't leave money on the table. In other words, if there's something that's really kind of cool and impressive in your activities list, like founder and president of Model United Nations, don't assume that the reader is going to know what that is just based on your 160 character description of it. Because that's all you get for the description. You see how these descriptions are really short? That's all you get. So if you feel like, that's not enough, and I'm sure it's not if you're founder and president of something, you might want to write about it. So those things that are kind of obvious, like if you spent 11 years playing the piano, maybe have one of your personal insight questions be on the piano, unless you're just overflowing with tons and tons of topics. Still, I think it can be worth, writing about those things that appear as the activities that you've spent the most time focused on. So we're shifting now from what to write about to how. So how do we stand out on these prompts? I think there are 2 types of structure. One's a narrative, which is to say a story with a beginning, middle, and end that's usually it's about somebody overcoming an obstacle or facing a challenge and what they did about it. It usually has 3 parts. The narrative has the challenges, what I did about it, and what I learned. But most of, I think, the personal insight questions are going to be a different structure. They're going to be montage, which is going to be jumping around in space and time and talking about different values or different qualities and how they've been expressed or experienced through your particular topic. And I'll show you what I mean in just a second. I think that, the way to tell the difference between these is that if you're either writing about a challenge or you're not. So the narrative style will be on a challenge. The montage style is really about, I think, an extracurricular activity. Now, obviously, if it's on something academic, it's not going to be extracurricular. But I call this, broadly speaking, the extracurricular essay, because oftentimes you're going to be writing about something that is an extracurricular activity. So just ask, am I writing about challenges or not? If yes, the narrative structure might work. If no, maybe the montage. And I'll give you some examples in a second. As I mentioned, in the narrative or challenges structure, events are linked causally, not casually, causally, where A happens, which leads to B, which leads to C. So it might be I was really shy, and then I joined a debate class, and then I got less shy. Or it could be, my father said this thing to me, or treated me this way, and here's what I did about it, and here's what I learned through the experience. That's a very vague college essay topic, but I'm trying to just think of like what some students write about. So essentially, A led to B led to C. Whereas the montage connects its story events, and by this I mean its paragraphs, or more broadly speaking, the stuff that you want the college to know about you thematically. And an example of that might be, I'm really curious and I like working with my hands, and I'm really interested in helping others. All of these connect because I want to be a dentist, So the theme of that essay would be like, reasons why I want to be a dentist. Or it could be, I love juggling. And you might think juggling is just a fanciful thing, but for me, juggling has helped me connect with community. It's helped me become less shy, and it's also helped me, develop my art. So those three things would give you the three parts of the essay, and the theme that would connect them all would be juggling. Here's how you stand out on your UC prompt, so on your topic. I like to do this game. It's called the Uncommon Connections game. The other name for this is the UC game, which stands for Uncommon Connections. And in order to do this game, what we need from the audience is I need a suggestion of a topic that you're worried is going to sound too cliche. So in the chat box, if you'll just type some common topics, what is a topic that someone is actually working on and they're worried, oh my gosh, everybody's going to be writing about this. Give me some suggestions and we'll pick one and we'll brainstorm your topic here live. So what do we got? Let's see what comes in. There's a little bit of a delay on the call, so good GPA. Yeah, probably not a great topic because that's not going to reveal something new about you, right? Communication. Give me an extracurricular activity that you're worried is going to be a common extracurricular activity. Oh, travel to another country for charity. That's a great one. That's a good common topic. Give me some more. Because I want you to give me some more because I want you to see how this exercise that we're going to do can apply to all of these things. What are some other extracurricular activities that are really common? Sports or, community service. What do we got? What are some other things? Is there a particular sport? Like literally, you might just go through your activities list in your mind a second and think, ooh, there are definitely going to be some other students writing about that. People are saying sports. Which sport? Give me a cliche sport. Being on student government. That's a great one, Tracy. We might do that one. Let's go ahead and pick that one up. So student government. Yeah, ASB. That's a great one. Okay, a lot of students writing about student government. So here's what I want you to do. Let's take step one and let's brainstorm. So this is going to be Tracy's ASB essay. I'm just going to assume that you're writing on that. So I want everybody to take a look at this values exercise and tell me what are the cliche values that normally students who are writing an ASB essay would focus on. What are some of the obvious values? Every associated student body or every student government essay focuses on what? Give me some ideas here. I could give mine. I know there's a little delay here, so it'll take me just a second to hear back from you. Democracy. Ooh, that actually could kind of be a good one. Leadership. That's a great cliche one, Carrie, right? Like it's not about me. There's no I in team. It's all about the people that I'm working with. Community. And I've loved connecting with others on ASB. We form a family. It's not just, we're working together. It's like we really care about each other. Cooperation. Yeah, great, Katrina. That's a great cliche one. It's all about working together and finding a common goal that suits all our needs. Okay. You get the idea, right? Hard work. We stay until the, late night working till around the clock because, it's all about supporting our school. Responsibility. Yeah, that's another great one. Okay. So here's my challenge to you, Tracy. I want you to agree, just for the sake of this webinar, to not write about these topics, not write about these values, rather, when you're writing on this topic, if you choose to write about it. And especially if you've got an impressive role on ASB, it could be a great thing to write about. But here's the challenge. And I'm going to issue this challenge to everybody listening. Can you come up with some uncommon values that people wouldn't normally associate with ASB, with student government? So everybody take a look at this list. And what are some interesting, unusual, uncommon connections that you could make? So I'm going to just write that in the chat box. What are some uncommon connections? And beware, because I'm going to ask you to, working alone. I like it. Keep typing. Carson, working alone. That's beautiful. And I love it because it's an opposite to what we normally think, right? Now, Carson, just play that out for me. How could working in ASB, what might that teach you about working alone? This is a great one. I've got stuff that I'm making up about this. Look at some of these, but everyone, I just want to challenge you to a second to see if you can look at this list and write down a value or make up a value that you think someone might develop based on working in student government that you might not initially be able to make a connection between. Ooh, Carson's got a great example. So working alone, it's not as efficient sometimes to work as a team, right? Hearing from everybody sometimes slows things down. So sometimes I've learned it's important to just take the lead and make the call. Great. That's great. So listen to that, how that paragraph begins. One of the things ASB has taught me a lot about is working alone. Ooh, that's a little bit more compelling than it's taught me about working in a team. That's like snooze. I'm asleep after the first sentence, right? Cool. What else? Let's see. I'm looking through these. Some of these I think I can kind of guess. Wit, I'm guessing, Tracy, is about, being witty and sort of like the importance of humor. I don't know. That could be interesting. The importance of humor. Let's talk to me about that one, Tracy. How has humor, or what connection could you make between humor and working on ASB, working in student government? See if you can type it out a little bit. What else? Let me challenge you guys. Could you find a connection between working in student government and, let's see, healthy boundaries, or let's see, honesty. To what extent do you need to be honest with people when it comes to, student government? You can't be completely honest all the time, right? Or else it kind of creates madness. Or can you? What, Tracy, have you learned about honesty when it comes to working in student government? Here's my point. If you can find a few of these uncommon connections, for example, I loved Carson's, this working alone, that's going to make for a much more interesting paragraph, and ultimately a combination of these is going to make for a much more interesting essay. Sorry, personal insight question. Let me give you a quick example. This is called the Santur essay, and it's written by a student who basically wrote on something called a Santur, which you'll find out about in a second. Here's the personal insight question. Do, re, fa, mi, re, do, fa, mi, re, do, sol, fa, mi, re, mi, re. Have I completely lost it? Should I be locked up in a mental hospital chained to a chair? No. Then what are these utterances coming from my mouth? Music. I've devoted thousands of hours to playing the santur, a classical Persian instrument that originated in the Middle East. Some people think I'm strange, a Persian redheaded Jewish teenager obsessed with an ancient musical instrument. But they don't see what I see. My santur is King David's lyre. It can soothe, enrapture, mesmerize. The santur also allows me to connect to my culture and Persian heritage, and to visit Iran of the past, a culture rich in artistic tradition. Sometimes I imagine performing for the king in the hanging gardens of Babylon, the santur sounds echoing through the 7 hills of Jerusalem. You can just hear that happening there, right? Now, let me just say, how is this written? Well, each of these paragraphs has a value as the theme of the paragraph. So if you look here, they don't see what I see. My santur is King David's lyre. So this is beauty, the theme of beauty. It can soothe, enrapture, mesmerize. It also connects to culture and heritage. So music, this instrument, is now connected to culture and heritage, a connection we don't always make with these music essays. Today, some Americans view Iran as a land of terrorists. But when I play, the innocent of Iran, the educated, the artists, the innovators come to life. Iran's not a country of savages. It's Kubla Khan's fountain, an abundant source of knowledge and creativity. Listen to that. It's beautiful. So this is like music as a tool for social change. So he's changing, or working to change, the perspective that people have, it's beautiful. Isn't that so much more interesting than music has taught me about hard work, perseverance, and discipline? Finally, the santur represents one of my remaining links to my grandfather. So now he's got family. In the last few years of his life, Baba June didn't know me as his grandson. Alzheimer's slowly took over his brain, and eventually he couldn't recognize me. Baba June grew up with the music of the santur, and my father plays it in his car every day. So when I play, the music connects all 3 generations. In December, I'll be releasing my first album, a collection of classical Persian pieces. Proceeds will go toward Alzheimer's research as I hope to play some small part in finding a cure for the disease. Notice he doesn't say I'm going to cure it all. He says, I want to play some small part. I hope to play some small part. My teacher is one of only a handful of Santur teachers from Iran. And I sometimes wonder if the Santur will soon become extinct, like the 7,000 endangered languages, which may soon be gone. Notice that connection. So music is now an endangered language, but not if I have anything to say about it. And that's 350 words, y'all. So it's possible to say something meaningful that shows different sides of you in just 350 words. This is a montage. It's jumping around in space and time, giving lots of different examples, but he's using uncommon values. He's making uncommon connections. And this is what makes it stand out. A boring essay or a boring personal insight question, and this applies to any supplemental essay you write, is a common topic like basketball. Common connections. Basketball has taught me hard work, perseverance, and physical challenge. Common language. And that is why I love basketball. A more interesting response chooses an uncommon topic, like the Santur. Makes uncommon connections. Like it's, playing this musical instrument has connected me to my heritage, my family. It's helped me engage with social issues in unexpected ways. And uncommon language, the hills echoing off, the sounds of the Santur echoing off the 7 hills of Jerusalem. Now, you might be hearing this, and if you're probably thinking what I'm thinking, which is like, well, I don't have an uncommon topic. And if I were applying to college, I wouldn't have one either. Then listen, this is the most important thing I'll say on the webinar. All the more important to make uncommon connections. In other words, if you're not standing out with your topic, you can still stand out with the connections you make because you're smart and creative. It might take you a few minutes to come up with some of those uncommon connections, those unusual values, and it might take a few tries. But this is what's going to help your personal insight question stand out. Uncommon language is a nice bonus. If you can write poetically like that guy's doing, thinking in terms of metaphor, great. But if I had to put my money on one of these, I'd make it this one, uncommon connections. Even if you do have an uncommon topic, let's say you do play some obscure instrument or, something that you've done is different from other students, don't get lazy. Make sure you're not just saying the usual thing that most students will say. And it can be useful, as I showed you, to brainstorm for yourself. So the sort of cliche version of your essay, the mission trip essay. Lots of students are writing about going to another country and helping other people. How can you think about, well, what are other people going to say and not say that? The key, or one of the keys, is in that values exercise. Challenge yourself to say what others won't say. Again, just using those values. Some people wonder, can I use bullet points on my UC application? And the answer is actually yes. The UC readers, the UC directors have said that you can. If you've got some time, my personal preference, my personal advice is to go ahead and flesh it out because I think readers like to read a nice story. But if you're worried about how it's going to sound, what's more important to the UC reader is information. You don't have to write a beautiful piece of poetry like the one I just showed you. You can just give the facts. That's what they're mostly interested in, the information. So I just want to balance things out here. If you're interested in a 17-page PDF handout that includes some of the FAQs that I get, the exercises that I mentioned, the values exercise, a little handout that explains that UC essay game or the UC game, and then 3 great sample personal insight questions. If you just go to collegeessayguide.com/get the handout, type that in, you'll be able to download, there's a little thing you can fill out. You type in your email and I'll send you that handout. If you'd like more help, this is what I mentioned earlier, in completing your UC application, I've got this cool course called How to Answer the New UC Application Prompts. It's a video course that's available. Let me just talk to you about it for 2 minutes, and then we'll do Q&A. So let me switch. Okay. Thanks for your patience. So let's see. There we go. Okay. So here's my screen, resharing, 3, 2, 1. Okay. It's a pretty cool course. It's got 5 video lessons. They're an hour each. And then I've got a 30-minute Q&A. There's a pay. And if you can't afford the suggested price, it's no worries. I will, and any price is good. It's a week long. Basically, I would say it takes a week to do it. It's a 32-page workbook that comes with it. It works for all the UCs. Here are the titles of them: How to Choose Your Topics, Session 1. Session 2 is on how to stand out. And I'll also share with you. I'll show you in just a second the course guide. There's a student version for students, a version for counselors. There's the regular rate and there's the early bird rate. If you can't make the sessions, don't worry. You can sign up and I'll still send you recordings. And so I've got a live version, which I'll show you in just a second. There's a live version happening in September and October. Or if you want to get started right away, which I recommend if you can get started this summer and you'll get access immediately to the course. So this is the live version where you'll get to be able to ask me questions live one-on-one. And then the recorded version, obviously I'm not going to be there with you. So, you obviously would just need to listen to the past Q&A. Just to show you a little more of what it looks like inside, here's the layout of it. Here are all the sessions already ready. You can click the course guide at the top. I'll just take you a little sneak peek inside what the course guide looks like. You just click here to download. It takes a few seconds. And let me show you inside what that looks like. Basically on the course, I cover pretty much everything you need. And by the time you go through it, you'd have written all 4 of your personal insight questions and the activities list. So here's the 48-page guide. Here's the course guide. And what you'll see as I zoom down here, you'll see that I've got an example for each of these personal insight questions. And I'd walk you through structurally how to write those. So let me zoom down and I'll show you what those look like. So, I walk you through these exercises step by step. I've got sample essays and I kind of break them down and explain why I think they're working. And then, like I said, there's a little exercise for each one that shows you how to walk through and write each one. So you're listening to this and you're thinking, great, but what's the catch? How much does it cost? Well, I'll tell you. Let me just give you back. Show you this, and here we go. Took a peek inside already. There's an offer that I made last week on the other course where it was $97 just for the people on this webinar, but we decided to do something a little crazy. So we're going to make a 20-minute offer. And for the next 20 minutes, if you're interested in the course, it's $47. And that's so you can get access to it immediately and, watch it all right now. Or if you're interested, you can just get you can do the live version, which is with me in September. And if you're interested in that, just use the coupon code Capistrano. You'll see something pop up on the in the right side of your margin, and you can just use the coupon code Capistrano and get it for $47. If that's not interesting to you, no worries. You can get the free resources. But just so you know, this is not something that's available through my website. This is just the price through my website is $197. But for folks on this call, we'll do $47. So that brings us to the Q&A. The other thing I'll say about this, as we start the Q&A, and you can feel free to type your questions in the chat box. The other thing I'll say is, if you're, like I said, if money is an issue and you're concerned, don't worry. Just email info@collegeessayguy.com and let's work something out. You'll also see when you click that link that there is a pay what you can option. And so this is really important that you hear me say this, that access is really important for me. I believe that the same resources should be available to everyone, no matter what the cost is. And technology allows me to make that offer. So it doesn't cost me anything extra to add somebody else. So, that's why I really want this to be affordable. And so I welcome your questions. The questions could be really on anything related to the stuff we've discussed or college essays. And so we'll just open it up for questions now. And I'll put on a little music in the background so you can hear that I'm still here. Because sometimes when I'm silent for a few seconds, people are like, is he still there? So I'll just put on some music. And feel free to type your questions in the chat box. Here's a track that I'm really into. It's oops, sorry. This is called this is Holocene. A little Bon Iver. Oh, I don't know if you can hear it. Actually, I don't think you can. Here we go. Actually, it's probably going to echo if I play the music, so I'm not going to do that right now. But
we couldn't hear it, but your singing or your humming was pretty good.
Do you want me to just sing it? I could just sing it for you.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
Sure.
I'm like a shower singer because I like the echo. That's about as far as I go. Karaoke, I got you. Karaoke in groups, even better. Yeah. But you're probably not going to hear me sing right now. So
All right, everybody, have the questions come in. Start thinking about what you want to ask him, and we don't want to let him go before his time is due. So,
Maybe I will try it, Anthony. You can tell me if it's echoing or not. So let me just hit the music because it is a nice song anyway. Can you hear a little guitar?
yeah, that's coming in.
Okay. And I'm not echoing terribly.
You're not, but I am.
Tracy's asking if I haven't had any major challenges, should I just do the other form of answer? Yeah, for sure, Tracy. So, it could be. So, first of all, don't feel pressured to discuss challenges. If you haven't faced any, that's fine. You've got, 8 different prompts there to choose from. And none of them are like weighted more heavily than others. So it's not like you get bonus points for being through challenges, as many people seem to think. It's possible to write a great, personal insight question and a great main essay for your, that's not about challenges. So yeah, just pick one of the others. One thing that I'll say though, if you do decide to write about, let's say, a community service project that you've done, it could be that community service project is the montage style where you're jumping around in space and time and talking about how you've been impacted or things you've learned, lessons you've learned. But it could also be that there was a particular challenge that you faced. Like maybe you guys ran out of funding and you had to problem solve, or you were running a fundraiser and suddenly, no tickets were selling. So you had to solve that problem. So you might find as you start to think through some of your activities that, that there was a challenge that you went through that you had to solve and you learned a lot through it. But if not, again, don't worry. The montage works totally cool.
Ethan, we get this one a lot, and you briefly mentioned it. You talked about, well, the different questions and which one to choose, but a lot of people go, well, which one is easier for me to do? Which one should I look at? So if you can kind of give everybody some insight into,
sure, that's a great question. Yeah, one of the things I'll say that is not easier is the last question, which is the what makes you stand out. I think it's hard to answer that question just personally. I don't know what I would say. That feels so wide open. One of the things that I think is relatively easy to write about is the leadership one, and students might be kind of like, well, they might balk at that, but there's so many ways that you've demonstrated leadership. And then the second one is creativity. You can look at any activity on your list and think about ways that you've creatively expressed yourself, or think about creative ways in your academic classes that you've been able to engage. And I think it depends on sort of your personality type but even students who would consider themselves to be not quote unquote creative. I've had a student last year who was like, no, I'm just interested in computer programming. And I'm like, dude, there's so much creative stuff that connects to computer programming. So I think the leadership and the creativity ones can be applied to a lot of things. So those are two of my picks. The other one is an educational opportunity that you've had, and a lot of things can count as educational opportunities. I encourage students to go on the UC website and actually read, in more detail about different things that they would consider as a part of that. But educational opportunities can be another great one. Ruby asked, will the same person read all essays, or are there different readers for each essay? That's a good question. Yeah, the reader it'll be 2 different readers, but they'll all read all 4 of them. So you can kind of think of it, and I've heard that they read them in order. So you can kind of think of these as 4 different little vignettes, and those will together create the portrait of you. But also consider that these 4 parts are really just 4 parts, and you've also got your activities list, which tells its own story, and you've got the additional info section where you can put in more stuff. So consider that you've got 6 parts. And maybe if you want to think about your grades and your test scores, that's a 7th part that's telling your story. So think of those as all being places where you can demonstrate some of your core values and your strengths and your creativity. I wouldn't get super creative with the activities list. I think you can be a little more straightforward. It's a little bit more resume-like. But the most important thing on these, sometimes students ask, well, how creative can I get? Can I do a poem? I'm really into, I don't know, creativity. Can I do it? And so what I'll say to them is the UCs, whereas other schools, like small liberal arts schools, I think there's a little more latitude there. I think with the UCs, what they're really looking for is information. They're reading these applications really fast. They say the average is 8 minutes, but it's from people that I know who read applications for the UCs, it's more like 5 minutes. sometimes less. So they're going super fast through these. So making sure they get the information is really important. Julian asks, if I plan to write prompts for the Common App, will it be worthwhile to write new essays for the UC prompts? Great question, Julian. So I have two answers for this. And I think, it depends on your topic. It's like any great question. The answer is always, it depends, right? So for the Common App, keep it in mind as you're writing your UCs. So in other words, and here's the advice that I give, and I go into depth on this in my course, but it's important to map out all the essays that you'll need to write and to look them all up so you can start to see which ones will double and triple. I find that usually if students are writing about a challenge on their Common App, that's going to work well for the prompt 5 that's on challenges for the UCs. Okay. So in that case, I would say yes. Sometimes it's a little bit harder. It just depends on what your topic is for the Common App. And I noticed you said, if I plan to write prompts for the Common App, in other words, I imagine you're talking about the supplemental essays that you'll need to write for the other schools. And in that case, I think, yes, that it is important to consider doubling. Having said that, it's sometimes tough because the UCs are asking for pretty straightforward informational takes. And sometimes other schools like University of Chicago are asking for more creative, takes. So it just depends on the prompts. But part of, I think, your work and, part of, again, what I cover on the course is like, how do you double and triple these to save yourself some time? So, and the reason I keep mentioning the course is, and I feel okay doing that because it's pay what you can, but it's like, we can talk more about that there. It would just be hard for me to give you examples without giving you like specific, essays. But in short, yes, definitely double and triple them as much as you can. Sharon asks, if your grades and test scores are really high, do the essays matter less? Good question, Sharon. I would say slightly less, but there's no guarantee for the top UCs, right? So Berkeley and UCLA, and other schools now, I mean, like UCSB and UC Irvine and Davis, these are not, I'm sorry, by top, I mean most highly selective. I didn't mean that. That's probably a bad thing. I wasn't supposed to say that, but those tend to be the hardest ones to get into. The academic profile of those students tends to be a little bit higher. They tend to get a lot of applications. UCLA gets more than any school, so that's me qualifying that. But, even if you've got a 4.0 and a perfect SAT score, you're not guaranteed entrance. So this leads to the next question by Delia. How much are the personal insight questions weighted in the application overall? I think they matter, especially when it comes to extenuating circumstances. So I'll give you an example. I worked with a student last year who, had a pretty good SAT. He had 1910 on the old SAT, and he had a pretty good GPA, like 3.7. Not amazing, not perfect, right? But I think it was like a 3.6. He had some bad grades his freshman year. But on his personal insight questions, he explained a few important things, like his family was undocumented, and he was having to work to support his family and to deal with some residency issues freshman year and an abusive father. And so all of those complications, I mean, those great grades, even those Bs were despite going through those difficult situations. So that, and then he brought his grades up to straight A's, and he was able to put that in one of his personal insight questions in the challenges one. In another, in his additional info section, he was able to say that the 1910 that he got on his SAT happened to be the top score in his entire grade. So that gave some context to that. In another personal insight question, he talked about working in construction since he was 11 to support his family. So in this case, I really feel like for this student, it made the difference. He got into all the UCs that he applied to, and he actually he's going to go to Stanford next year. And I think that in this case, this is when the additional info and the essays really mattered. Do they always matter? I mean, it just depends, right? But where I'd say it really matters is in circumstances like that, or if they're trying to compare between two students who have similar academic profiles. So another student with a 3.7 with a 1910 SAT, or on the new one that would be more like a 1300. Does it matter? Yeah, it matters when you're comparing students who otherwise you can't tell the difference between them because they've both got MUN. Maybe they both play tennis. Well, how do you tell the difference? It's what's the content and that information that they're giving in the personal insight questions. So I think they can make the difference. Do they always? No, but I think they can really make a difference, and I've seen it every year. Julian asks, would they rather you write about hardships and ordeals or triumphs and celebrations? Well, I don't know, Julian. What would you rather read about? I guess it's kind of a balance, right? I want to hear about your triumphs and your celebrations and your activities list. I want to know what a rock star you are. And that's important to differentiate you from the other students. But so that's the activities list. But it's kind of feels like braggy if you're writing about those in your personal insight questions. So that's where I'd put hardships and ordeals if you've been through some. If you haven't been through hardships and ordeals, why? You don't need to make any up. But I would say that the reason that writing about hardships and ordeals can be useful and productive is that that's oftentimes how we develop who we are, and in particular, our core values. So I always you can hear me, I mentioned it like 6 times on this webinar, coming back to your core values. How did you develop those? Oftentimes it's through they were forged in the fire of whatever challenge you went through. So I want to hear about both of them because I want to get the whole picture of who you are. So if you've got, the option of choosing those, Julian, yeah, do them both, definitely, because you've got lots of opportunities for personal insight questions, activities list, and additional info. Some other stuff that can go in the additional info section is like, that student that I mentioned, that undocumented student, had to drop, or actually the whole school dropped a particular sport because their coach left and then they couldn't hire a new coach and it was too late. So the whole sport disappeared from his activities list. That's kind of a red flag sometimes for schools. So he explained why that was. And I was like, oh, okay. He also got a 4 on his AP Physics, and he let the school know in the additional info, or let the schools know, that he was the first student in his school to pass the AP Physics, and he actually lobbied to get the AP Physics 2, as a test taken at the school. So yeah, use that additional info section. That's really important. And you can oftentimes just copy and paste that from your UC application into your Common App. So you can definitely double use that. And you can definitely double use your activities list in your Common App, as I mentioned earlier. You'll just need to trim them slightly. So it's 160 characters per description for your UC. It's 150 for the Common App. The title is 60 characters for UCs, and it's 50 for Common App. So you'll just need to shorten them slightly. I give a bunch of tips on that in that post that I referenced earlier. But if you just Google how to write the UC activities list, you'll see my tips on that. What other questions we got? We got a few minutes here. I know we're kind of at time, but I guess we'll talk until the little offer goes out, another 5 minutes. Other questions that folks have? Tracy's asking, is there a specific format I need to use? Oh, there are a couple questions here that I missed. A specific format. I'm not sure what you mean by format, Tracy. Tell me a little bit more what you mean by specific format. Katrina's asking, what is your advice if I have trouble making uncommon connections? Well, if you're just thinking about the way that I, had you think about it just now, I only gave you like 2 minutes. So I'd say be patient with yourself and keep thinking about it. For some students, it's a little bit easier. Sometimes it's a personality thing, to make those uncommon connections. But it can be, here's a fun exercise. If you just get with a friend or a couple friends and you help each other brainstorm some uncommon connections, you'll see in the handout that I, share, if you opt in for that there's a little game, that UC game that you can play. I know that doesn't sound like a game like, apples to apples or Cards Against Humanity, but it's certainly more productive. But with the UC game, you can actually have other people help you think of uncommon connections. And just in the way that I've done it, like I did it at a workshop with students yesterday, I just had them sit around a table. There were like 6 students, and I said, okay, take a minute each and give your toughest topic, and then for a minute, just have people look at the values list and name connections that they see, and you just write down what they're saying. And then ask them later, well, which connections do you see? That'll give you a bunch of ideas. So that's one way to do it. Let's see. Would I be shunned if I use Comic Sans or use incorrect font size? They want MLA, right? So Tracy, it's going to be a copy and paste in. So you're not going to get to choose the font or the size. It's just, copy and paste into a form. It's going to be 350 words strict. So don't worry about being shunned for font choices because it'll just go right into their system. And you won't need to worry about MLA or not. Definitely check your grammar. I mean, that kind of goes without saying. It needs to be impeccable. And again, I want to just emphasize that information is what's important here, less than like poetry. So don't worry about having to sound all fancy. What they want to know is who you are, what you've been through, and what you've learned through your experiences. So one person got a message or sent an email to my brother who just let me know that they need to ask their parents. Then we'll extend the offer another day or so that folks, if they want to, if they need to check in with somebody and get permission, that's totally fine. So just if you're interested but you need to wait a little bit, just email info@collegeessayguide.com. Sharon asks, will it cut you off at word 351? Yes, it will. They're super strict at that. I think when, based on the system, when you paste it in, it just will trim that word. So just make sure when you're in Google Docs or Microsoft Word or whatever that you do a word count before you paste it in. We got time for a couple more questions. What do we got? Carrie asks, if your GPA is around 3.5 and ACT score is a little higher than average, is it worth still applying to UCs? Are you fooling yourself? I think so, Carrie. Why? Because you can apply to 6 schools at once. And if you live in California, and even if you're not in the top 9% of your class, you've got a chance of getting into one of the UCs. So I'd say go for it. And it may not be that you get into, every UC that you apply to. But I'd say definitely still apply. So yes. And again, applying to 6 schools at once, you don't have a lot of opportunities to do that. Usually with applications, you got to fill out different different supplemental essays. But for this, you'll be able to apply to a bunch of schools at once. And and also it's going to be, it's going to be reasonably priced if you're in California. So you can see the link I just posted in the chat box. If you want to get the handout, that's that 17-page PDF. You just type in your email and I'll send it to you right away. And again, I've got a ton of free resources on the website. If you just go to collegeessayguide.com, click free, that's kind of what I'm known for. The free resources and the pay what you can courses. The reason I do pay what you can, and I just want to again emphasize that, like, if it's $5, that's okay, because I feel like I just want this to be accessible to as many folks as possible. So, Peggy says trying to join the class, but it says coupon is not valid. Try it once more. Actually, I'd be curious. Did anybody else try it? Did it work for anybody else? Let me know just in the chat box really quick. Try it again, Peggy, maybe just all caps because it might be case sensitive. If it doesn't work for some reason, you can just email info@collegeessayguide.com and we'll figure it out for you. But I'd be curious to know if anybody else tried it and it worked. To know if it's something that's not working for anybody or if it's just maybe a glitch or something with Peggy's computer. Oh, Tracy said it's not valid either. Oh, interesting. Interesting. So we'll figure that out. Try it again. Try it once more, I suppose. I tried the coupon. It said invalid. Oh, so it could be that the coupon is wrong. Let me check with my brother. Give me 1 second. He's looking at it. So bear with me for just a minute. Sorry for that. He's checking on it. Dev, let me know what you find. Needless to say, if you're interested in that, is that the link, Dev, they should click? So he just put up a link in the chat box. If you click that link, it says Ethan Sawyer said it, but Devin typed it in. There's a little link. Click that. Type in Capistrano, all caps, and try again. Needless to say, if it doesn't work for anybody, you can just email info@collegeessayguide.com and we'll give you the same offer. All good. It says, be sure to click the live and not the on-demand version. But the on-demand version should work as well, right? They should be able to get that. He says we can add that. So click the live version just so that you can kind of lock it in. But it should be, if you want the on-demand version, just email info@collegeessayguide.com and say, I'd like the on-demand. I want to get it right away. Tracy said it worked. Awesome. Sweet. So essentially, just make sure that you sign up for the live one and then just email us and we'll make sure you get access to the on-demand one. So you can get the best of both worlds. The advantage of having, check this out. Here's a little bonus. The advantage of having access to both, and you can feel free to access both with that code, is that once you've written your essays with your personal insight questions with the on-demand version, then when it comes time for the actual course, the live course, there's a point where I ask people to submit their drafts and you can just log on for that day and come in and actually just have me give feedback on your draft. My hope is to have a bunch of people on the course, but every time that I've done it, I've been able to get through most or all of the personal insight questions. I do speed sessions, but feel free to do that, to join so you can get some feedback from me on your drafts or on your topics. So hopefully it's working for you. If not, like I said, just email info@collegeessayguide.com and we'll get it worked out. Oh, Devin pointed out something else. If you're interested in any of the other courses, I've got one on the personal statement, the Common App, and I've got a supplemental essays course. This coupon code, Devin just let me know, is good for all of those. So those courses are, the same rates, but you can use that coupon code to sign up for those if you're interested. So flash sale. And again, the pay what you can offer obviously applies to all those too. So if you liked what you heard and you're interested in, spending some more time together, I'd love to connect with you. So, Anthony, that's what I got. We can hold up for a couple more minutes, but the coupon codes should still work for folks. And, again, feel free to email anybody if you've got questions. And happy to turn things over to you, Anthony.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, I really appreciate it, Ethan. Another successful webinar. Remember, everybody, we're going to repost this on our website if you want to look back, if you want to catch something you missed. And we'll send out some of those resources and information probably tomorrow or the next day. So you can follow up with that. If you have any questions, just email back. Other than that, we really appreciate your time, Ethan, and energy and engaging everybody as usual. So everybody thank him so much. And we look forward to our dodgeball team next week.
Awesome. I can't wait.
Hopefully we'll give everybody an update on how well we do and if we come home with the trophy.
Awesome. I'm so excited now. We're starting a dodgeball team, y'all. That's what you missed at the beginning of the call.
Oh yeah, you missed that, everybody. So I already emailed them and I let them know who's on our team. I got the 3 counselors here at Futureology, myself and the 2 of you. So
sweet. Let's do it. Awesome.
Yeah, and if you want to get Jed, and we could check around with a few more pickups we can get.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to start the email chain right now. So. Thanks, Anthony.
All right. Well, everybody, thanks a lot. Have a good night. You can log off, and Ethan, Devin, you guys can send me the link, and I'll get in the resources, and I'll get that out to everybody.
We will do it. Thank you
All
much.
right. Perfect. Have a good night.
All. Be well. Have a great night.